There's a language women speak that has no words. It exists in the pause before she answers, in the way her breathing changes when you hold your ground, in the glance she gives you when she thinks you're not looking. Most men spend their entire lives deaf to this frequency, listening only to what she tells them while completely missing what her nervous system is screaming. Here's the truth that will change everything once you understand it. The things she wants most are the things she will never ask for directly. Not because she's playing games, but because the moment she has to articulate these desires, they lose their power. Some truths can only exist in the space between words. In 1957, psychologist Leon Festinger documented something he called cognitive dissonance, the measurable gap between what people say they want and what they actually pursue. His research revealed that humans rarely understand their own motivations. They construct narratives that sound acceptable while their behavior tells an entirely different story. This applies to attraction more than almost any other domain of human psychology. She tells you she wants sensitivity, communication, emotional availability, and part of her believes it. But her attraction center, the ancient part of her brain that predates language, that evolved over millions of years to identify genetic fitness, that part operates on completely different criteria. Most men make the fatal mistake of listening to her words and ignoring her responses. They become exactly what she describes wanting, then wonder why the spark dies, why she seems distant, why what started as electric chemistry now feels like filling out paperwork together. The men who understand the architecture of female desire don't ask what she wants. They learn to read what she responds to. And that distinction separates those who are chosen from those who are merely settled for. What I'm about to share operates beneath the surface of polite conversation. These are behaviors she craves at a primal level, but will never request directly. Not because she's manipulative, but because requesting them would destroy their power. Once you see this, you cannot unsee it. Let's descend into the psychology, into the 6 behaviors that trigger something ancient in her nervous system. 1. She wants you to lead without asking. There's a study by behavioral psychologist Terry Conley examining female fantasy patterns. The data revealed something most men find uncomfortable. A significant percentage of women fantasize about scenarios where they're not the one making decisions. Not because they want harm, but because the experience of being wanted so completely that someone takes charge is neurologically intoxicating. This isn't about control, it's about relief. Women navigate an exhausting world of constant management, decisions, social dynamics, emotional labor. By the time she's with you, the last thing she wants is another negotiation. She wants to feel like someone else has this handled, like she can finally stop being responsible for everything. But here's the paradox that kills most men's attempts at this. She cannot ask you to take the lead. The moment she has to instruct you to be decisive, you're not being decisive, you're following instructions, and that destroys the entire dynamic. She wants you to read the room, to sense what's needed, to move with quiet confidence without looking back for approval. Real leadership isn't loud. It's in the way you touch the small of her back when guiding her through a doorway, the way you choose the restaurant without making it a committee discussion, the way you make a decision and hold it, even when she initially pushes back, because you understand something in that moment that she'll thank you for later, not with words, with the way she looks at you when no one else is watching. Psychologist Marta Miana's research on female arousal patterns found that women respond most intensely when they feel genuinely desired, when they're the object of focused pursuit rather than a partner in endless negotiation. That dynamic cannot be manufactured through conversation, it can only be embodied through action. 2. She wants you to hold your ground when she tests you. Every woman tests, not consciously, not maliciously, but instinctively. She needs to know if you're solid, if you'll maintain your frame when pressure arrives, if you'll collapse the moment she challenges you. Relationship researcher John Gottman spent decades studying what predicts long-term relationship success. His findings surprised many. It wasn't the absence of conflict that predicted happiness. It was each partner's ability to maintain their identity during conflict. The couples who held their ground with each other had dramatically higher satisfaction rates. Most men fail this test immediately. She says something sharp and he apologizes reflexively. She withdraws slightly and he chases. She creates distance and he floods her with reassurance-seeking behavior. In that moment, something shifts in her perception of him. Not consciously, deeper than that, in the part of her brain that's evaluating whether this man can be relied upon when life gets hard. If you abandon yourself to keep her comfortable, she'll never feel truly safe with you, because if you can't hold your ground with her, how will you hold it against the world? When she pushes, you stay present. You acknowledge what she's saying without becoming reactive. You don't get defensive. You don't collapse into explanation. You don't suddenly change your position because she challenged it. You just remain there, calm, grounded, unmoved. That steadiness is what she's actually testing for. Not because she wants to fight, but because she needs to know you're unshakable. The next behavior explains why so many relationships lose their spark and how to prevent it from happening. 3. She wants you to maintain mystery. Psychotherapist Esther Perel has built her entire career studying what kills desire in long-term relationships. Her central insight is counterintuitive. Fire needs air. Intimacy and desire are not the same thing. The couples who maintain erotic connection over decades are those who preserve a degree of separateness, of unknown territory. Most men do the opposite. They become completely transparent in the first months, sharing every insecurity, every fear, every wound from childhood. They believe this vulnerability creates closeness, and it does, but closeness without tension is just friendship. And women don't experience desire for their friends. When there's nothing left for her to discover about you, her brain stops investing in the puzzle. She knows exactly who you are, exactly what you'll say, exactly how you'll respond. That predictability registers as safety, but it also registers as sexless. This doesn't mean you become cold or withholding. It means you maintain an internal world that exists independent of her. Thoughts she doesn't have access to, pursuits that have nothing to do with her, a life that doesn't revolve around managing her emotions. When she asks what you're thinking, sometimes the right answer is simply nothing important, not because you're hiding something, but because not everything needs to be shared. Some things are yours alone. That privacy, that slight unknowability, it keeps her invested, it keeps her wondering, it gives desire the space it needs to breathe. The moment you become completely predictable is the moment she starts experiencing you like furniture, comfortable, reliable, invisible. 4. She wants you to want her more than you need her. Evolutionary psychologist David Buss has spent decades studying mate selection across cultures. His research consistently shows that women are attracted to men who demonstrate capability, ambition, and direction, men who appear to be moving towards something significant. Here's why this matters for what she secretly wants. When you make her your entire world, you're communicating that you have nothing more important than her. On the surface, that sounds romantic, but her attraction center interprets it as a warning signal. If capturing her attention is your greatest achievement, how capable are you really? She doesn't want to be your world. She wants to be part of a world you're building. The men who become too available, too responsive, too eager to rearrange their lives around her, they lose attraction rapidly. They've signaled that she's the center of their existence, and that level of focus becomes suffocating. When you prioritize your mission, your work, your growth, your direction, something counterintuitive happens. She doesn't resent the times you're unavailable, she respects them. She starts competing for your time instead of expecting it as a default. This isn't manipulation. It's simply how value perception works. Your attention becomes more valuable precisely because it's not unlimited. Your presence becomes more appreciated precisely because it's not guaranteed. She won't tell you she wants you to choose your work over her sometimes. That sounds wrong when spoken aloud, but when you do it, when you tell her you can't see her tonight because you have something important to focus on, watch how she responds. Watch how her investment increases. This next principle is subtle, but it's one of the most powerful dynamics in the psychology of desire. 5. She wants you to leave before she's ready. There's a principle in behavioral psychology called the peak end rule. Researchers found that people don't judge experiences by their average quality. They judge them by the peak moment and by how they ended. Most men overstay every interaction. They stretch conversations, extend dates, linger in moments trying to extract every last drop of connection, and in doing so, they let the energy fizzle into something flat and forgettable. She remembers that. Her brain catalogues the desperation, the neediness, the sense that you had nowhere more important to be. But when you're the one who ends things first, when you leave while the energy is still good, while she still wants more, her memory encodes something completely different. She's left in anticipation rather than saturation. She's wondering when she'll see you again, instead of feeling relief that you finally left. Anthropologist Margaret Mead observed something consistent across every culture she studied. The person who controlled the terms of separation held the social power in the relationship. Not the person who clung, not the person who tried to extend, the person who could walk away first. This applies to everything. Text conversations that end while they're still interesting. Dates that conclude at the high point rather than the natural death. Even disagreements where you disengage before things devolve. When you're genuinely a man with a full life, with places to be, people to see, goals to pursue, you don't have to manufacture this. It happens naturally because your time actually is valuable. She senses that authenticity. But if you're lingering, waiting, hoping to squeeze out a few more minutes, she senses that too. And it costs you more than you realize. 6. She wants you to understand without being told. This is the synthesis of everything, the deepest truth about female desire that most men never access. She doesn't want you to ask what she wants. She wants you to already know, not because she's playing games or testing you unfairly, but because the man who has to be instructed is, by definition, the man who doesn't understand. An understanding, true understanding of her desires, her responses, her unspoken signals, is the foundation upon which all desire is built. You cannot negotiate attraction into existence. You cannot reason someone into wanting you. You cannot have a conversation that creates chemistry. You can only become the kind of man whose natural presence triggers her nervous system to respond. That requires learning to read what she never says, to notice the shift in her breathing when you hold eye contact a beat longer than expected, to feel when she wants you to push forward versus when she needs space, to understand that her words are often the opposite of what her body is communicating. Here's why this knowledge matters more than anything else you'll learn about women. Most men are so afraid of making a mistake that they make the biggest mistake of all. They play it safe. They sanitize every interaction. They become a version of a man no one could possibly object to and no one desires, because desire doesn't emerge from comfort. It emerges from tension, from polarity, from a man who's willing to lead into uncertainty without waiting for permission or approval. Everything I've shared requires risk. It requires you to stop performing safety and start embodying genuine masculine presence, to stop seeking confirmation and start creating the reality you want, to stop asking and start knowing. The men who understand this don't negotiate for attraction. They don't explain their worth. They move through the world with a quiet certainty that women can feel from across the room. Not arrogance, certainty. The unshakable knowing of a man who understands his own value and doesn't require external validation to feel it. In a world saturated with men who are afraid to actually be men, the one who isn't becomes instantly rare, instantly magnetic, instantly unforgettable. She will never tell you any of this directly. She can't. The moment it becomes instruction, it loses its power. The magic exists only in the space between words, in the signals you learn to read, in the architecture of desire that operates beneath conscious awareness. But now you know. You've been given a map to territory most men never even know exists. You understand that her words are often the surface, while her nervous system speaks a deeper truth. You can see the gap between what she says she wants and what she actually responds to. What you do with this knowledge determines everything. You can dismiss it. You can tell yourself it doesn't apply, that it's too uncomfortable, that the world you've been sold is the real one. Or you can accept that desire operates on frequencies most men never learn to hear, and you can start tuning in, reading the signals she broadcasts without words, becoming the man who already understands rather than the one who's always asking. The choice has always been yours.